All right, everyone, thank you for being here. We're really excited to put on this event. I'm Pierre Michaels with the Career Services Center. We're partnering with the accounting department to bring some great people here to talk about the accounting field. So thank you for being here, and we'll get started. And as we get started, just to ask a general question, can you guys talk a little bit about yourself individually? We'll just start here with David and move down the line and just kind of give us some overview of your background.
Sure. So my name is Dave Eisner. I'm a audit partner at a mid-market accounting firm called Miller Cooper, based in the Chicagoland area. We have offices in Deerfield, downtown Chicago, and in Downers Grove. Been with the firm my entire career, 19 years this August, which makes me feel old. And I went to school at Northern Illinois University, both for undergrad and grad school.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christina Sanchez. I'm currently working at a company called PowerStop. Just started there recently as a corporate controller. My career has primarily been in the industrial manufacturing sector. Oh, absolutely. Here, sorry. Is that better? I don't really have a very strong voice. So my career has primarily been in the industrial manufacturing sector. So private industry, I've seen all kinds of really cool stuff, whether it be aerospace, military aerospace, storage tank manufacturing, automotive. So I've seen a lot of really cool products. So best decision I ever made going into accounting. It's really led me to a lot of interesting places. So so happy to be here. Looking forward to sharing with everyone.
I'm Joe Lassard. I'm a director at a firm in Barrington, Professional Business Management. I've been there since 2009. I actually started at COD many moons ago and went to Elmhurst after that. Mostly focus on healthcare. Most of my clients are physicians, dentists, some veterinarians, and any other offshoots of businesses that they own.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I'm Julie Figueres. I'm an audit partner with Grant Thornton. And I've been in the accounting profession for longer than Dave. So I think I'm the older one here, but 28 years in the profession, and really would like to say that I'm so happy to be back at COD. Like Joe, I graduated at COD, got my associates, and went to NIU. It's it's one of those, best money can buy, right? In terms of getting your associate degree at a wonderful college like COD, and got my accounting degree pretty much in 2 years after I left COD. So my parents thank NIU too for money well spent. But I have been in public accounting since really I entered the profession in 1994, so 28 years, and been a partner in audit for 13 years of that, married with 5 kids. And I tell these guys, none of my kids want to go into accounting. So I'm so happy to see all of you that are interested in accounting, because we need more of you guys. So hooray.
All right, thank you for those introductions. I also went to NIU, not for accounting, but always excited to meet other Huskies. So thank you for being here. You guys have a great wealth of knowledge to be sharing with our students to help them understand what accounting really is and that variety within accounting. Hearing from the 4 of you already, see all these different industries and aspects they could be leading towards. So just thinking about within accounting and your path, what would you how would you classify some of those different things that you've had the opportunity to do, and talking about those experiences from how accounting can expose you to different paths?
Sure. Do you want to keep going down the
Yeah,
line?
we'll just go down the line.
Sure. So for a little context, so I said that I work at a middle market public accounting firm. So we do traditional audit, tax, and advisory services, and we focus on privately held clients, middle market clients. So not SEC publicly traded companies. Generally, they're going to be family owned or private equity owned entities. And I chose that firm and these types of clients for a specific reason, because it gives me a ton of variety. So even though I've been with the same firm for my entire career, I've worked on construction companies, manufacturing and distribution, These days, I spend a lot of time focusing on different types of commercial real estate engagements. And I also do a lot of, I guess we'll call it outsourced CFO kind of advisory. You know, a lot of our clients, you know, being kind of smaller, don't have built out accounting teams. So maybe they have very strong kind of strategic and CEO type people level, and they've got people that can do the day-to-day bookkeeping and kind of blocking and tackling of the accounting. But they're missing some of the mid-level work to kind of, and you guys will learn this if you take accounting classes, get their books on GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles. So I help them kind of slot in and kind of keep their kind of cash accounting or whatever kind of modified accrual accounting they're doing in their books to get them ready for, you know, potentially a sale or some debt financing, or get them, you know, kind of more in line, you know, with what the standards would require because someone else may be auditing them. And then I do a lot of work supporting family office, and between my real estate practice and some of the family office work I do, it gives me, even though I'm an auditor by trade, it gives me a lot of exposure still to the tax side of things. And in the middle market, you know, a lot of our clients are very tax motivated. You know, money that the business kind of generates from a tax standpoint, it's money out of their pockets, it's money out of their family's pockets. So I strategically, you know, intentionally, I guess you could say, started to work in this area and with these types of clients because I wanted to stay well-rounded and I wanted to stay sharp. So while there's different ways to get exposure to different things in accounting by, you know, changing careers or working for different companies, you know, for me personally, that was one of the benefits of being in public accounting at the type of firm I selected, is because I got variety within the same organization. And obviously, as you grow in your career, you have different roles and you see different things, even if you're working on the same client you have for 15, 20 years like I have.
Yeah, it's great to get that variety with job security in one place.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm going to echo a lot of the same sentiment here. From being in private industry, you will be exposed to all different types of companies, whether it be service organizations, merchandisers, manufacturers. And I listed just a few examples of my career in industrial manufacturing, and they all present unique challenges that you as future leaders are going to have to help solve, right? And partner with internal as well as external stakeholders. You know, so as you would expect, part of the responsibility of leading a private industry organization is, of course, the financial operations. So you would expect the financial statement preparations, the analysis of that data, annual budgets, you know, helping the team with strategic planning and vision for the organization. But it also, at some point in your career, you know, you'll come to those fork in the road, so to speak, and you'll have opportunities to do things like M&A. I do a lot of mergers and acquisition work. So when a company buys a company, right, they're going to look to the accounting and finance team to kind of parachute in, you know, lead due diligence teams, making sure you're assessing those people, assessing the talent, the systems, the processes, et cetera, to ultimately make a decision. Is this a good buy or not? Maybe it is a good buy and you're just going to incorporate it into the existing infrastructure. Maybe the answer is purchase and complete dissolution, right? I mean, it can go a number of different ways, and you learn something along each of those paths. It's very exciting. Another arm that accountants are quite often involved with are ERP implementations, right? You're never going to go through a whole accounting career and not run into an ERP implementation of some kind. They seem to follow me everywhere I go, and that's not by design. So it's still amazing how many companies out there are on systems from 1980. Seriously, you wouldn't think that's the case, but it is. So again, another amazing learning experience. I cannot stress enough, if anyone ever asks, hey, you want to be involved in this? Yes, raise your hand. It's a long process, but boy, you really learn more than you would expect. Because right now, right, you just hit the key button, the button on your keyboard, and something happens in the background, right? Learning what happens in that background and being part of the design of what happens in that background is really invaluable experience. And then, of course, just partnering with internal stakeholders, with people within the company, as well as external, your auditors, right? I mean, consider them a partner. I know we always joke about auditors getting in our business all the time.
Which we do.
But they really are partners and you should see them as such. Whether it be audit, bank, legal, insurance, union, what have you. You're dealing with all of those types of stakeholders as well. So lots of exciting places to take it if you're in private industry.
My path was a little different. So as I mentioned, I went 2 years here and 2 years at Elmhurst. I worked for a mid-sized public accounting firm for about a year and a half. And kind of during that first initial phase with a lot of these, you kind of choose, you get some exposure into audit, some exposure into tax, and you kind of eventually have to choose a path. It's based on my experience. And I ended up going to a different firm about a year and a half out of school, a very small firm where I'm now an owner. And I've been there since I mentioned since 2009. I liked where I'm at, and I would hope so, I suppose, because it is small, right? You're not just a cog in a wheel. You were talking with clients all the time. You were a key advisor for them, and you were dealing with the partners immediately. And I chose this path for me because I focused a lot on the business advisory, the tax. Everyone needs a tax return. And so I chose that because I felt like I had a real impact with clients, a lot of impact with everybody. And I can, everybody hears you're an accountant. Most people, like, oh, you do tax, and that's yes and no. I mean, some people do, some people don't. I can talk about it. I can do that. So that's why I ended up choosing my path, and I don't regret it.
That's great. And so for me, I was listening to your path, Dave, and I think, for Dave and I being in public accounting for all these years, it's a small percentage of people that enter public accounting and stay this long, right? So I think it's, we've been very fortunate in that. Is it a different lifestyle to be a partner of a public accounting firm? Absolutely. But it's, I think it's very rewarding. And for me, from my path, I started much like Dave with the middle market clients many moons ago. But, I started a family pretty young as a senior associate. So I mentioned to you guys, I think we have 5 kids, and our oldest is now 25. And, when you're still in public accounting, you think to yourself, like, what do I do, with a young child? And I want to stay in public accounting. And so to me, the switch that I made was getting into employee benefits audits. And to me, it's very unique and very niche type of work where you can really focus on the deadlines. And as a working mother, I did that for a very long time. And I was on a flexible work arrangement where I worked for 15 years at a reduced schedule. At a 70%. So there were days that I worked 3 days, and there were days that I worked, 5 days, and there were days that I worked 70 hours a week. So, but you do it's ebbs and flows, and it's one where my family knew when it was busy season, it was busy season, and this is it for me. Where actually my practice, and it's a pretty big practice out of Chicago. I work with 2 other partners and many managing directors. This is our busy season now because employee benefits, they all filed their returns with the Department of Labor, October 15, which happens to be a Saturday this year. So it pushes it a couple extra days. But to me, I think finding that niche of really focusing on this industry has really worked well for me because I enjoy what I do. I enjoy the people I work with. And by the way, we're working with millions, billions, trillions of assets of retirement income for all of our participants. So it's really something that I do enjoy. And I think within the firm as well, where Grant Thornton is right below the big 4. So in terms of size, we're in 50 plus offices, over 120 countries. We have 40,000 employees worldwide. In the US, we have about 9,000, 10,000 employees. So, pretty sizable company. But the other thing that I really do get to enjoy, other than client service, which, I think obviously that's the core thing that we do, is really helping our organization, our firm with our culture. And you probably have heard quite a bit about business resource groups and D&I, right? Those are your diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm very involved in that, and that's something that I really enjoy. helping our people and culture in that regard. I also love going to campus and recruiting. And so that's how I met Maureen and stayed connected with that at NIU. And I love to see all the students and, get to work with them. But that's really, I think, one that comes with the role as a partner is to be able to go back to campus and recruit and give back, I think, to the profession.
I can just elaborate on something Julie mentioned, and I think it's kind of relevant to this group. We may sit here with our experience and, kind of portray like we always had it all figured out. I think we're all very happy with where we ended up. But as far as like the ebbs and flows and the twists and turns that a career takes, I think especially where you guys sit right now, don't feel like you have to have it all figured out. I know I didn't. And don't feel like you have to have the confidence that every decision you make has to lead to, a decades-long career somewhere. Because the reality is you're making educated guesses. We were talking about earlier on the panel before we started. You don't know what you want to major in, where you're going to go to school, and then how your career starts, that first internship, that first job, what industry it'll be in. And that's okay. That's part of the process of trying to figure out and hopefully end up in a place where we luckily ended up where you really enjoy what you're doing, who you're doing it with, who you're doing it for. And I don't know, when you were kind of talking about how you started one way and moved another way, I thought I just wanted to chime in with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Many paths for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and just from a career perspective, we know that on average, this is an average number, people change their career 9 times. So there's a lot of opportunity to grow as a professional once you get rooted. And we hear that, there's so much variety within accounting. And one thing that I just want to emphasize that all of you hit on, may not have said it explicitly, but this idea of engaging with people. When I think of accounting, I think of numbers and working in books and that, but that's not what you guys talked about. You talked about being able to help people, the rewarding aspect of engaging with them, and just keeping that in mind and that's a whole nother perspective of accounting that we don't always realize.
Yeah, it's not your typical, what your stereotype of accountant is, right? With the advisor and the adding machine, that's not what most accountants do, right?
Right.
You're talking with the clients, you're talking with people, and that's the most rewarding part of what we do.
I agree. There's never, your days are full of calls and meetings and it's not heads down. Of course there are heads down and get the work done, but there's, and certainly you progress to your career. There are first couple of years, that's what you do, right? And then you move up in your career and you can move up very quickly these days. We were talking about how the profession has really changed and has been very aggressive even in the promotion process, right? Gone are the days where you have to wait another year for the next promotion cycle, right? Now, if you're ready and you're ready to be promoted, you're going to be up for promotion. So,
And what gets you that promotion is your ability to work with people, right? That is the difference between an accountant and a business person, I always say. And accounting, the numbers is really only half of the equation. And I don't know, some may disagree with me, but I think it's almost a less important half, right? It's almost a means to an end, because as future accounting leaders, you're going to have a seat at the table. You're going to be partnering with CEOs and presidents and salespeople and operations folks. These are non-accountants, right? So you need to be able to take accounting and put it into their terms and help them run the business and make decisions for the company. So again, it's that partnering that's a little bit even more important than the numbers. So.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I think especially with the way technology is changing things, if you think about it, the stuff Julie and I did early in our career, we don't need to do anymore. It's, we used to validate certain things that is automatically validated, or you test the system and now you gain comfort that everything going in and out of that system, is valid and checks out. So what really differentiates, us and our professions now is, where are you adding value? Okay,
Exactly.
we're working with much larger data sets now. Everyone's capturing data everywhere, financial data, non-financial data, but who can interpret that, right? That's the thing that the machines are going to take a really long time to catch up to. And that's where you really differentiate yourself. And I think, that ties into the people aspect of it too, is, if you can kind of understand what the data is telling you, you can understand what the financials are trying to say and kind of interpret, is that a good deal, bad deal, back to that acquisition kind of comment, and then not only kind of internally understand it, but be able to explain it. That's what's really going to set people apart kind of as just business in general changes, as the profession changes. And I think that's probably why it's a little surprising to hear a bunch of, non-stereotypical accountants tell you that the people aspect is the biggest part of our jobs.
It really is. I mean, you think about how many people you interact with and with different background. You mentioned partners, right? And, you talk with a lot of lawyers and a lot of actuaries and, people that you wouldn't think that, but these are regular conversations you have, which I think is great, because I think accounting is such a well-rounded profession that it exposes you to a lot of different things.
Yeah. And your advice and your guidance is sought after, right? People will be coming to you and say, I have a problem, I need your help. And again, those people are going to be across, many different skill sets. And so, yeah, it's just critical to be able to put all of that data together.
Yeah, accounting is it really is the backbone of a lot of business, right? You don't have to go into tax. You don't have to go into audit. I would love for you guys all to give me a resume today, but the point is you can do so much with accounting. You can start, if you want to be an entrepreneur and start your own business, having that backbone of accounting is so important.
And you're the first line of defense, really.
Yeah.
Right. Quite often. I mean, you are expected to see that train coming, so to speak, before anyone else does, right? You're the numbers person. So it starts with the numbers, but you got to be able to look at that and see trends and see, wait, we're doing A. Well, that means B is going to happen, right? I better go and communicate that to the right people, so that you can either shift gears or, prepare for impact, whatever the decision is. So, I mean, quite often if something happens and leadership doesn't know about it, accounting is where they go to. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, just an example of that, just for more context, knowing that you guys are earlier on in your college careers and everything. So just think about, an organization, an organization typically will have a sales team, right? And salespeople, they're built to sell and they think every sale is a good sale. Well, typically the accounting staff or, in some way in the finance team, someone's going to say, not every sale is a good sale because you just sold that for $1,000, but it cost us $1,500 to make the product and get it out to the customer. That's a bad sale. And again, without kind of those insights being shared within an organization, the salesperson's going to keep going out and losing the company money, thinking they're doing a great job generating all these sales. That's just one kind of very simplified example of the value we can add, even though we're not, typically looked at as kind of that value add part of the organization.
So much good information in this. I really enjoy what I'm doing, but maybe I should take a career change into accounting.
Come on over.
So you guys hit on this a little bit through the conversation, but I want to revisit, how has the field evolved, and really trying to think back to being in our students' perspective as you were entering the accounting field to now. How has your perception of the field changed? What did you think of it as you were entering it to now in hindsight?
So from my perspective, I always knew I wanted to go into public accounting, going through kind of the job fair process and interviewing with firms. I got a good feeling that I wanted to go into auditing. And I thought it was what it sounded like, which in the middle market, so again, we don't work with public companies, so there's not an SEC mandate or a public markets mandate for our clients to have audits. Typically what happens is they borrow money from a lender and the bank says, I want to make sure the numbers you send me every month or quarter isn't garbage. So I want an independent third party to come in and verify it or audit it. So I thought a big part of our job was just cranking through those engagements. And early in my career it is, because that's kind of how you learn the skills and learn how to analyze data. I didn't realize that now, I've been a partner now for 9 years. Like doing the compliance part of the job, kind of reviewing the file is such a tiny piece of why our clients engage us. And it's such a tiny piece of what I do in my day to day. So I didn't realize, at least early on, just how vital it was to have those direct relationships, develop trust with your clients and the different contacts, and they call you with non-accounting questions, just general business questions. They see that you have insights and they just want to pick your brain on certain things. And that was, to me, it was a kind of a surprise as I grew in my career, ultimately made it to partner, and then, continued on in this role. I didn't expect to really, spend so much time not auditing as an audit partner. It was just very different.
Just gonna sign that opinion, Dave.
That's what I thought I'd do. Just, another step in the process of, this audit process where, the staff prepares, the in-charge reviews, the manager reviews, and then I'm making sure that from a risk perspective, we're done. I mean, yes, I still do that as part of the process, but it's such a small piece of what I do.
As I was thinking about this question before we started, my answer was going down the lines of what we've already discussed up here about the people side and less about the numbers. But also, I guess I'll say, when I remember finishing, my accounting education, and I thought, I made it, right? I know everything now, right? In terms of accounting, you work so hard and you think, okay, I got it. And then, as quickly as you start into business, you realize how little you know, again, because of everything we've chatted about up here. So that surprised me, as well as, again, just how central of a figure accounting as a whole. And, when you get to controllerships or CFO roles, just how central of a position you really have. You're not going to be popular. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Everything is always accounting's fault, but you're really the ethical compass of the organization also, right? I mean, you will come up to a situation, and maybe even plural throughout your career, where someone's going to say, why don't we just do this, right? Or why don't we just do that? And you have to be, it's your job as an accountant, as a CPA. You're taking that oath to be steadfast in following GAAP and doing the right thing and being ethical. And you're going to have to say, no, that's not the way we're doing it, right? And, this is why. And I want to preface that by saying a lot of people who ask you to do things aren't accountants, right? So they're not asking necessarily from a facetious perspective, or they're really trying to be fraudulent. But you do have to teach people the right way to do things and the wrong way to do things from an accounting perspective. So again, it's not just the numbers, it's even not even just the people, but you are in that room to say, no, we're not doing that. Okay.
So I may have been in similar shoes as you guys. I came to COD, had no idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a math teacher. Then I was talking to these guys here. I found out I had to take like 4 calculus classes. I'm like, that's not for me. I happened to stumble upon an accounting class, and I was like, all right, I'm kind of good at this. I'll continue that process. Got my associates, but that was the only accounting class I took here. It was back when COD was in quarters, so half a semester, and transferred to Elmhurst. And I was like, all right, I'm going into accounting. Started taking more and more, getting a little more exposure. That first accounting class at Elmhurst, I was like, wow, I really like this. But my perception of the field has changed so much from when I first started doing it to now. When I was in it, right, the whole point of school is to, expand your mind. You learn how to learn. And I don't use some of that stuff that I use. Like what I'm saying, because I don't mean school's important. What I'm trying to say is I don't need to know about GAAP where I'm at. I don't need to know about SEC filings. I don't have to deal with any of that stuff. I don't have to deal with audits. I'm glad I don't. But the perception when you're in it is to gather all this knowledge, and the point of it is to help point you into whatever direction you want to choose. But I heard about the CPA exam, and I'm a CPA. I'm also an enrolled agent. How many of you guys know what an enrolled agent is? 0, 1, 2, right? I got that first because that applied more to what I'm doing. Enrolled agent allows you to practice before the IRS. It basically allows you to sign tax returns. That was more important. That was more relevant to what I'm doing. CPA, I don't use half that stuff. I don't do anything with foreign financial reporting or audit. It's a good hazing process. I think the running joke is CPA stands for can't pass again. These are all different hurdles in your career choice that help guide you and help you broaden your mind, your horizon of what you want to choose. But I had no idea what I wanted to do. And it's okay if you guys don't. But accounting, as I mentioned earlier, is a good backbone to all of it. So keep taking those next steps.
Yeah, well, Joe, when your company's big enough someday and you require an audit, Dave and I are here. So-
That's right, that's right.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah. And so for me, when I graduated NIU, this was back in 1994, the Big Eight was huge and everybody wanted to work for the Big Eight. And so when I had the opportunity to interview with the largest firms, I went with Arthur Andersen, because why wouldn't you go with Arthur Andersen? They were the big firm on campus. And so it was an honor to work for the firm. And, you know, if you've not heard of Arthur Andersen or have learned about the whole Enron, well, you will. You know, you will, and you probably have heard all of it. But that was the firm I worked for, you know, a long time ago. And, you know, but anyway, but I landed in a good place with Grant Thornton. I've been with the firm now for 20 plus years, but there were many times where you go in and you go, I don't know if I could do public accounting much longer, right? I mean, you know, there were days where you go, I think I'm gonna quit. I think I'm gonna quit. And then you get through it, and here you are 28 years later, you're still in it. So, but you know, like Dave said, and these guys, if there's no straight path, but you do, you know, I think you make decisions based on, you know, the best information at the time. And I think, you know, the profession has really changed quite a bit too. I mean, it was very different 28 years ago, right? Everything was so manual. Everything was, I mean, now with innovation, and, you know, you alluded to data analytics and, you know, use of Power BI, it's like, my God, if that existed back then, it would have been easier for us, I think, right? Than by, you know, looking for your 21-page ledger paper and having to write, you know, the audit information and somebody having to review it and say, well, that looks wrong. And then you have to get your eraser and you have to like rewrite it. So very different from a long, long time ago. But, you know, I think it's just a great profession. Like I said, there's a lot of avenues to go into. I think with innovation these days too, I mean, we gotta take it, you know?
I want to elaborate something you said earlier, the prior question is, the other perception I had was crazy amount of hours. That may or may not be true, depending on where you focus on and the timing of that, right? As tax focused as I am, my busy time is usually December through April. Well, I used to work for a firm that was working 70 hours a week. I don't do that. I don't do that right now. I've got 3 kids. I don't have time for that, right? So it's finding the right balance. And a lot of firms out there have a much better work-life balance than they ever have. You mentioned you were able to go part-time when you needed to,
Yeah,
you know?
for 15 years.
Yeah.
Long time.
So that perception is a big change from where I was 10, 15 years ago.
So much great things that you guys already hit on, but just to kind of isolate something, what is that most appealing thing to you right now about being an accountant?
So for me personally, I get bored really easily. So normally you wouldn't think that would align with being an accountant based on typical perceptions. Every day is different. So I enjoy the fact, and I acknowledge it, and this kind of relates to what Julie was saying, a lot of people end up leaving public accounting for a lot of the same reasons that keeps me in it, keeps me attracted to it, because some people think that waking up and not knowing how your day is going to go and everything's going to be different, that's too chaotic for them. And I get it.
Totally.
But that's one of the appealing things to me is I don't know, you know, if I'm helping someone figure out a technical issue, you know, dealing with a client that feels like their business is, you know, kind of at a, you know, big turning point as far as, do they buy a company? Do they sell? Do they do this? Do they do that? So that's one of the bigger appeals to me is just the variety on literally a day-to-day basis. And I think the other thing to it, and not to, you know, bore you guys to death with like the people aspect of it, but internally, like I love, you know, there were times in my life where it's like, I would guest teach at Northern or something like that. And I'm like, I think I would teach accounting someday. And what I realized as I kind of grew in my career, I do teach accounting every day to our staff, right? So a lot of the times, we're getting to work with people and helping them have that kind of aha moment or help them figure out certain things. And I guess this kind of relates to the other question about what did I not expect going into it? I didn't expect to be able to do that on an as frequent basis as I do. And I didn't expect to get so much out of it, like it being so gratifying, kind of helping someone through those challenges. And then kind of bigger picture, like on a career standpoint, those people that are kind of, do I want to quit? Do I not want to quit? Half the time they're frustrated or they're stressed out because they're doing it wrong, right? So being able to use some of the strategies and the insights I have in my career that help me kind of better navigate, kind of see the flexibility that's apparent to me now, but isn't apparent to them, being able to kind of coach them through that. I think that just being able to help someone stay in, seeing people that I used to mentor become partners in my firm, when I knew that they were on the edge of quitting multiple times because of different stressors or, things that have happened in their life, that is very appealing to me. And that is something I always fall back on when myself, I'm up against a deadline, have a stressful client call or meeting, something like that. So I mean that, if you like helping people, that's another thing that where you kind of wouldn't think about it on the surface, but you get to do that. You get to scratch that itch a lot, at least in public accounting.
Yeah, private industry as well. I mean, that's what I find most appealing is just the variety. It is not the same day, even twice a week or, every other week even. And I as well, I always need a challenge. I get bored very easily too. If a company is, making money hand over fist and they're a well-oiled machine, I'm really not interested. So all of the companies that I look for are suffering in some way, shape, or form. And that's fun to me. That's exciting. Businesses will go through all kinds of things. Maybe maybe it's a turnaround, right? Maybe they aren't doing very well and they want a new leadership team to turn the ship and get things on a better path. The company I work for right now, when I interviewed, one of the first things they said is our goal is to go from 300 million to $1 billion. Sign me up. I mean, that's not easy stuff, but again, it's not just you working on an island, right? You're part of a team that's going to make that happen. But all of the stuff that goes into all of these different types of challenges is what I find most appealing. And again, it's not just the different industries. It's not even the company that may have created the suffering, right? Look at COVID.
Mhm.
Right? Did anyone see that coming? No. I mean, just imagine the stress on leadership teams trying to navigate their organizations through that. The competitive landscape can throw a monkey wrench into your business, right? Your biggest customer goes bankrupt or out of business. What are you going to do now? Your biggest supplier will no longer supply you what you need. So it's not even internal problems that you create for yourself. Sometimes you have to respond to those external factors as well. And quite often you don't even see them coming. So, yeah, I mean, can't underestimate the variety.
Yeah, I'll echo the same things, guys. The best parts of my job are the variety and dealing with people. Except my company, we focus purely on healthcare. So I'm talking to doctors all the time. You'd think they get very, very boring, but it's the same thing. Different clients, same thing. But everyone's got their own stuff. Everyone has their own challenges. So despite it being a similar practice as to another doctor practice, it's very different. And I can come up with a list of like 10 things I'm supposed to do today. I only get to 3 because something's always changing. You're pulled in different directions, but that's what I like. And people don't.
Right.
And usually if you go into public accounting, you kind of have that fork in the road, whether you get that exposure in public accounting and then you're like, all right, I'm going to go private, or you continue to charge forward, or you just do something completely different. But I love that variety. It's every day is different. The plan I will have in place for that day is going to change. But the best part about my job is dealing with people. I like to help them, guide them, and whatever sliver of advice I can give them to help them run their practice, run their business. I mean, I tell my clients, you went to school to do this. You focus on doing that. You're a good doctor, do that. I'll help you run your business. And I won't do it for you, but I will coach you. I will guide you. And I will educate you. education is awesome. I love doing that. Helping clients, they don't know. I mean, my clients, for example, they went to school to be doctors. They don't know how to run a business necessarily. They don't teach that in school. You kind of just, hopefully you have a good advisor, or you just learn it. You just kind of fall into it. So helping them do that is the best part.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I could say a lot more on top of what these guys have mentioned, but it's things like you're thrown into a lot of different things that you can use your agility and collaboration and your leadership and all these skills that I think you learn just throughout your career. And the great thing is you don't do this alone. There's a lot of people to help you. There's a lot of people that are very, very smart, right? I mean, we're surrounded with so many smart people. And so it's like, you don't do things alone by yourself, right? You consult, you get to know people, they train you, you train others. And that's what makes it, I think, very different every day. Like you said, there's nothing that's the same. And I think as you grow older in the profession too, there's just more wisdom that comes with it. Things that used to bother you so much, maybe you're 10 into the profession, it's like, who cares, right? Now it's like, been there, done that, that's no problem. So it's like you just learn to, I think, know how to deal with it and deal with it in such a way that, make a better impact than like, I can't do it, I'm just gonna quit, right? And so, and I think you learn a lot from that too. And just like I said, you are just surrounded by really great people and really, really fun people. And that's, I think, what's kept me in the profession is I've been working with a lot of the same teammates, many of them partners now too, that have grown up in the profession a long, long time ago. So I hope to retire with them, but they're gonna retire first before me, which is making me jealous.
Well, and typically when you're with an organization for a while, they're like-minded people too. So that's the other part that was a little unexpected, but it's very gratifying is you develop deep personal relationships with a lot of these colleagues. I was, reminded multiple times, I have a lot of friends that, whether they were in accounting and went to different firms or, they went in entirely different directions professionally, they have kind of work friends and people that they only talk to within work. Like I've developed relationships where we're going to each other's weddings, we know each other's kids, we vacation with each other, very unexpected. But I mean, it's when you kind of take a step back and think about it, a lot of companies have their own culture, and generally what tends to happen is you attract a lot of people that want to be part of that culture. And for some people that's fast-paced, cutthroat. For some people, it's more laid back and relaxed. And again, as part of your kind of development in your career, figuring out, what you want to do, where you want to work, part of that is figuring out what culture you want to be associated with and be a part of. Hopefully you could be added into that culture as well. But that's not a really gratifying thing.
So just listening to you guys speak, I could tell that you really enjoy what you're doing, right? You see a lot of positive in the field, but let's be fair, right? It's not all positive, right? Sometimes there's challenges, there's drawbacks. So again, what would you just say from your perspective are some of those challenges or drawbacks from what you do?
I think Julie and I've touched on it a bunch, but in public accounting, the hours can be demanding, right? I mean, a lot of what we do, and Joe too, I mean, a lot of what we do, I guess all of us, it's all deadline driven, right? I mean, someone once told me, when you go into accounting as a profession, you kind of have homework all the time because there really is always something to be done and there's usually a deadline attached to it. So sometimes that can be a lot, and all of us mentioned that it's kind of unexpected. You never know with the phone call that's going to come in. So you may have this plan, you've got, we're accountants, we're organized, we've got this nice to-do list. You think your day is going to consist of knocking out a couple of those things. Well, those things still need to get done, even though you got 4 phone calls of other things that take priority or other things that are as time sensitive as the other things you had to plan out. And I think that really kind of comes to a head around deadlines or anything like that, which again, are kind of constant in accounting and specifically in public accounting. So I think that's the biggest thing for me is just, you get better at it, the more you do it and the more you have strategies, the more you learn to leverage people, rely on your team. But I think just kind of the pressure that kind of ramps up around the deadline, just kind of hours in general, because there are sacrifices. I mean, so, Julie made a good point about, how she was able to be flexible and go part-time. I didn't, but I wouldn't have been able to last in public accounting without my wife, who's a very supportive partner. And just when I said, look, this is where I gotta be, you know, for this time of year, these deadlines, she's like, I got it. So I mean, without that, there would have been a lot of moments where it was too much to balance, you know, kind of the work-life balance or, you know, being able to kind of have some sanity outside of the work.
Yeah, I echo the same thing. That was my line of thinking for this question. And that doesn't mean that I hope we're not coming across like, you know, you're chained to your desk for 80 hours a week. But there are deadlines. You know, when you go into private industry, you know, you're going to be closing the month closing the accounting period every single month, right? So you'll learn, oh, well, that's closing week. You can't do it that week, right? That's closing week again before you know it, it's back around. And so it is demanding, but it's so rewarding as well. And, you know, Dave made a comment that I just want to echo, relying on your team. Again, you're not doing it solo, depending on where you are in your career, you know, whether it be your boss or the people who are reporting up through you, your colleagues, you know, it kind of takes a village, so to speak. So, you know, definitely it's a team effort, but demanding.
Certainly I'll echo what they said, but another thing is kind of expected to know it all.
That's
Because we do.
I'll be honest, I don't know anything
That's what my
close
kids say.
to,
I'm
no.
kidding.
Again, clients that I deal with are expected, oh, have you read this new tax law change? No, it hasn't even passed Congress yet, no. Or there's different aspects of X, Y, Z. No, doctor, you don't know how to perform this surgery. You're a dermatologist or whatever. You don't know everything about medicine. I can't be expected to know everything about tax or how to run I can't, you know, but so that is a challenge for sure. But you know, I use it as an opportunity to educate my clients and to help retrain their perception of who I am and what my capabilities are. I'm not your only person that's going to be on call for every day, all day long. We collaborate. We work together. If you find something, okay, I'm happy to read it. If I find something, I'm happy to bring it to you. We work together to find the best outcome for you.
Yeah, and it's definitely high stress, no doubt about it, no doubt about it. But in my Dave and I's profession in public accounting, there's also a lot of flexibility. And with flexibility, I think you have to take advantage of that, right? It's kind of a double-edged sword because, you know, I wouldn't miss my kids' volleyball tournament or a game. There's a game tonight at 4 or 5 o'clock. I will shut down at 4 o'clock to get to her game. Like, I could say that, you know, there would be very little time where I can't get to my kids' games, right? But you have to plan for it. There's a lot of flexibility, but it also means that you have to pick up something maybe later on, right? But the profession really has changed, especially with the pandemic and the hybrid work now. And I think that's providing all of us a lot of great opportunity to really work on our mental health. And one thing too, it's not just, you know, in my firm, but really every company out there is focused on mental health, right? And I think, you know, we're talking about that a lot more these days. So when we say, yeah, there's days where you're just working a lot, and I think in any profession, there's probably working a lot, but you can't sustain that 365 days a year, right? But how can you work so that you're smart about working those hours? You know, we always talk about work smarter, not harder, right? I mean, and have fun doing it. And I know that's easier said than done, but I think, you know, I think those are some things that are hard, and I don't think it's changed, right? I mean, there will be some hard days for sure. But what I didn't mention when you mentioned your wife is just a great partner. I have a husband who's also an awesome partner. Those years where I worked part-time because the kids were young, well, when it was time and I was up for partnership, we made a decision that he would stay home. And so that's what he did. So I wanted to mention that because I think back then it was a very non-traditional sort of unconventional way of, you know, I think from a lifestyle perspective, but now, I mean, it's much more common now, you know, and now my husband's retired, so, and that's okay. But yeah, I mean, like in any profession, I think there's always going to be some challenges.
Yeah, and I think, I kind of alluded to it before, and I think we all touched on it. Again, we don't want to paint this like doom and gloom picture, because the reality is, it gets a lot easier, and mostly because you learn how to deal with it. It's not that the job changes that much, it's how you approach the job and how you handle it. So a lot of it is, again, are you in a culture where they train you on how to manage your time better, how to prioritize, how to give yourself moments for mental health, as opposed to this constantly go, because there are some cultures where it's built into their business model to burn you out, right? It's also like a transaction relationship as opposed to a relationship. So again, kind of as you go through this process of figuring out, what you want to do, where you want to work, really take advantage of kind of career fairs and different opportunities to interact with different potential employers, because you'll get a feel for what kind of culture they have. And, some of them are very good at giving you a canned line, like, yeah, we support work-life balance. Like, ask for examples. How do you, ask about what their past couple of weeks have been like, ask about kind of the most stressful times, how do they decompress, what kind of things they do for fun. It'll tell you a lot about, how you're going to be able to navigate those things. Because again, we all wouldn't be here if we didn't think this was a great profession and a great career path, for the right person. But I do think a lot of the enjoyment and sustainability and a lot of the things we get out of it is because where we do it and kind of how we, learn to adapt with the challenges, which again are very rewarding, but are very real.
Just to echo what they were saying there, conversations with professionals, extremely valuable, part of why we want to bring these guys here today. Thank you for sharing this information to help our students see this. So Julie, you hit on this a little bit, I think, but just what do you see as the future of accounting and trends within the industry? How are things changing?
Yeah, like I said, I think innovation's really been big. I mean, I don't think we go into any strategic discussions with clients or even our firm and you don't talk about innovation, how you could cut costs, right? I mean, for us, it's a people business because in public accounting, our biggest assets are our people. So how do we help our people do their job in an efficient way so that we can, cut costs with delivering the same audit? Like the same audit that we used to do 20 years ago is run differently today. So I think it's really is quite different in terms of just the tools that are available to us. And so I think it's amazing. And then you as students, I mean, when I go on campus and they talk about, oh, I'm taking data analytics. Well, I think that's great. I think that is awesome that you're taking data analytics because it will really come in very handy when you go into recruiting or you're talking with your manager and you could go, I can interpret this Power BI result because I've done a lot of these things, right? Or taking, these Excel classes that like you take it for granted, but boy, if you are awesome at Excel, I'm not, so I need someone to do it. And you could do it so much faster, right? Than somebody my level who is really not proficient with Excel, like you guys. So I think it's really changed a lot to a point where you really are focused on using the, your highest and best use as accountants versus just spending the time just because, right? I think private or public, giving you the tools that you need so that you can do your job in such a way that is much more analytical and using your leadership and skills versus doing something that, that are, I guess, less, what am I trying to say? You know what I mean? Like just mundane type of work, so that it's more enjoyable for you, I think, in the profession, so that you're just not looking at some numbers. Those numbers mean something and you can do something quicker because of these things that are available to you.
And that includes hybrid work, remote work. I mean, the technology, it's existed, but we kind of force fed it because of the pandemic. So I know like our paradigm shifted at our firm a lot where, again, we're very relationship focused. A lot of our clients are in the Chicagoland area. So by default, if we were doing an audit, we were almost doing 100% on site. Well, now, we've been a little smarter about it. And there's some stuff that's more efficient, to be on site if you want to review physical files, or there's certain things that just makes more sense to be out there if you're observing inventory, observing production. But the reality is it doesn't need to be a full week, 2 weeks, whatever it traditionally was. So we'll kind of split up. When are we going to be on site with the client? let's make that time as effective as possible. When are we going to collaborate in the office and teams? And when are people able to work from home? And, again, we always had that flexibility built in just by the nature of the job. And, we've always traditionally leveraged technology, but we just got a lot more comfortable with it. I mean, the first time you're on camera and seeing yourself, that was a very daunting task. And now we all do it kind of second nature. So I think that's really evolved as far as a profession. And just another thing, if it's relevant, so our firm, again, Chicago-based, we almost exclusively hired and recruited out of this area. It's a very competitive job market. And what we found is we can hire, depending on the expertise, 100% remote employees. So there's some employees that, if you asked me 5 years ago, even, if we'd ever have people that, you would meet and maybe they'd fly in on occasion or you'd see them sometimes, but they would be full-time employees working for you, I would have said no chance.
Yeah.
And now that's like, we don't bat an eye. We're like, are they qualified? Sure. Let's interview them. We like them. Let's hire them. We do it all the time.
Yeah, technology has changed everything. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but from the way you work, from the way you work individually, from the way you collaborate with your team, from the way you work with clients, and how you do the job. I mean, as Zoom meetings, of course, but also just I'm able to produce results a lot faster. I'm able to, because that time savings, I'm able to do more with the client now. So that's been a big change.
And that's why those analytical skills are so important, the critical thinking. When industry is hiring, let's face it, debits and credits haven't changed in a million years, right? Accounting is accounting for the most part. Yes, it changes, but the basics are there. So, if you've got the education and you've got some experience, typically that's just checking a box, right? The next questions that you're going to be asked are, to test your critical thinking. Can you solve problems? Are you good with Excel? Do you have systems experience? So it's all about being able to, look at a lot of data and be able to decipher it quickly, right? Because when risk appears, right, everyone's in a panic and they need answers. You don't have a week to prepare an answer, so you have to make sure you know how to find the answers to challenging questions. So,
Yeah, learn Excel.
learn
Learn
Excel.
I didn't until I got into the field. I'm like, I hear other people learning about pivot tables, and I still don't know that stuff because I have someone else that knows that stuff.
Right.
That's fine,
Yeah,
but learn Excel.
yeah, for sure.
Great advice.
A lot of companies will actually test you for Excel as part of the interview
We do that,
process.
Yeah.
for screening.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that you know your stuff before you come on board. So it's critical.
Yeah.
So other than learning Excel, is there something else that you wish you knew or that you wish you prepared before you entered the field?
Oh, man. What I wish I knew. I didn't know really anything. So it was kind of like a day by day, I knew I wanted to get into accounting. I ultimately felt good about auditing. But yeah, I guess I didn't fully appreciate how much it mattered where I worked. Right, because like I mentioned it before, the culture and the environment. There's a lot of people that had a very similar path to me at Northern, and we came out. That Enron thing that Julie brought up. I was coming out of school right when that happened. So there were a ton of jobs because the accounting profession was changing. Sarbanes-Oxley, a bunch of regulatory things. Ton of jobs, not a ton of candidates. Very similar to today's job market for accountants. So I had a bunch of opportunities and I interviewed with everybody. I spent a ton of time just getting to know what made this firm a little different than this firm. I interviewed for corporate positions. And, again, all my peers were doing the same thing. And we all had a lot of similar paths. And I had no idea how different it would be by making the selection I made compared to someone who was probably smarter than me that went a different path just because, I made the right selection or I saw something specific in the firm I chose. And what was your statistic? Someone will have nine different jobs. So since it's an average, I've had one job. So someone else has got, 17 jobs to kind of make up for that. But I wish I would have known. And because right now, I'm very blessed. I'm very fortunate that I got where I did because it wasn't all my doing. And I worry about the people that maybe didn't spend the right amount of time vetting their potential employers are like, oh, I just need a job, or, oh, I'll just do this and figure it out from there. Like, you know, if you look at that first internship or that first job is just a job, I think you're missing an opportunity to really kind of fine tune your path and really kind of find your tribe.
Yeah, I would say don't underestimate the importance of mentors. You know, I never really thought of mentors when I was, you know, going through school. You know, I figured, well, I'll just figure it out when I get there, right? But I can't underestimate the importance of the guidance, especially early in your career. And your mentor doesn't even have to be someone you work for. It doesn't have to be your boss. Doesn't even have to be someone in that company. You know, could be an instructor, could be your neighbor, could be anyone, right? But someone who inspires you, who can give you honest, right, constructive feedback, and help you develop, right, whatever skills you need. And, you know, just give you good advice, make you feel confident, etc. Maybe someone, and they don't even have to be in the same industry you're in, right? Just someone that you trust and someone that you know, can help guide you. And that mentor will change throughout your career, right? You will outgrow your mentors sometimes, especially if you change careers 9 times, right? You're going to need 9 different mentors, maybe.
Yeah.
Please seek those people out. I can't underestimate their value.
Absolutely. I was the first one to go to college in my family, so I had no knowledge of college, for that matter. So it was very different for me. I had nobody around me really or close to me that could be a personal mentor for me. So one thing I think you guys are all doing it today is take advantage of your school resources.
Yeah.
There's, you know, this happens every year. There's different events every year throughout the year. And they've seen it. They've seen people. They know people in the profession. Take advantage of it. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'll say I learned this over time with making sure that you have a seat at the table and you have a point of view and you speak up. Because oftentimes you are in a meeting and you have something great to say, but you go, oh, that might be too, I don't know if I should ask this question. And then somebody else asked the question, I'm like, that was my question. I never said anything. And they thought it was brilliant, right? And so you've missed your chance. And that happens, I think, quite a bit, right? You have this thought in your head and I should say something. So don't be shy. I mean, we as partners, Christina, Joe, Dave, we'd love to hear from you guys. We would love for you to participate and contribute and have a point of view, because we know you guys are smart and you have a lot to bring to the table. So don't keep it to yourself. I think, and you know, because you go into an interview or you say you have an internship and it's time to do like the round table. At the end of the internship, you go around with your managers and the partner. What did you think of Dave and what was his performance? Well, Dave never spoke up. And Dave just heads down, didn't ask any questions. And I don't know if he'd be a good fit because he didn't really say a whole lot. So you have an opportunity to work with teams and work with great people, take advantage of that, ask questions. You go through, you know, this process. And, you know, if I'm going on campus and going to interview and that resume may look great, right? But if that interview didn't go well because the interaction wasn't good, it's hard to kind of get past that, right? So I think it's very important to work on your communication skills, your written skills, have a story to share. Right? I mean, stories are great. Stories are awesome.
Yeah, don't be a bystander, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be the architect of your own career. Don't wait for that neon sign. You know, I mean, it's you're going to have successes, you're going to have some failures. That's all part of the process. But I couldn't agree more. Don't wait for someone to ask, what do you think? Right? If you're sitting at that table, you're there because it's your job to contribute those thoughts. And, you know, sometimes your idea will be the route they take. Sometimes it won't be. You know, and then just make sure that you're shifting your thought process to, okay, this wasn't my idea, but how can I make this one be successful? Right? It's voicing your opinion is one thing, but you also have to make sure that you are contributing to others.
One of the things we all said at one point is we like dealing with people. So you got to be able to communicate. You got to be able to collaborate. And if you can't do that when you're interviewing with companies, then it's kind of hard, as you mentioned, to see a future potentially, right? You got to just put yourself out there.
You're too comfortable, you're not growing. That's
That's
absolutely.
right. That's
You're
right.
too comfortable, yeah, you're not
And-
growing.
And I think one thing that, you know, I wish I would have known earlier in my career, related to that is drawing boundaries and knowing your limits and kind of being able to kind of communicate those to other people as well. Because again, we've kind of all said it, like the fast-paced nature, the challenging nature, the variety, it can be a blessing and a curse. And I know just the way I'm wired and my personality, it was like, you know, our profession very much is a meritocracy. You know, it's hard to hide, you know, maybe initially when you start, but eventually it's really hard to hide. You either know your stuff or you don't. You're either good at the job or you're not. And very much people start recognizing that, and you do have opportunities to get promoted, you get put on new projects. And, you know, I very much had the mindset of I want to grow and I want to learn, and I like solving puzzles and I like problem solving and I like helping people. But that can go too far too, because if you take on too much, if you say yes too much,
Yes.
you know, like everyone, even my mentors were saying, yeah, find out a way to say yes. And they're like, okay, you're saying yes too much. And find a way to say, yeah, I can do that, but I've already promised these 4 things, or I've got these other things to do. And it took me a while to figure that out and really balance it out. So I guess that's another thing that I wish I would have kind of caught on to a little earlier, just because it would have saved me a lot of late nights and, you know, me trying to live up to promises that I stupidly made when I could have very easily given an early no, or I can't right now. And it probably wouldn't have stunted my development or my progression. If anything, I probably stunted it more by, you know, burning out, not giving my best to the next project, things of that nature. So
Yeah,
it's been my-
thank you for saying that. I thank you. A motto that I try to live by: under promise, over deliver.
Same, very successful.
You don't
strategy.
want the overpromise and the delivery.
No, because then what happens? You say yes to things, you say you can do all these things, and then when you inevitably can't, they're not going to come back to you. You're not going to get more work. You're not going to get more opportunities. And eventually you'll end up without a job, right? You gotta manage those expectations. You know, don't just say yes to everything. It's okay to say no. You know, just, yeah, under promise, over deliver. Because then if you say, I'll get it to you by Friday, and then you happen to get it done by Wednesday, you look awesome.
All within reason, Joe.
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna wrap up here. I've got one more question for you guys. But before we get into that, we'll then open up to Q&A. So if anyone here or in the live stream has questions, please start organizing your thoughts. So just as we end here, and you may have already hit on this with developing stories, finding mentors, different things, but what can our students be doing right now to prepare them to enter the accounting field?
I think you're starting it. Network with professionals. You know, I mentioned it before. Get a feel. You know, every firm kind of has a culture, has a vibe they put out. So I mean, the more you can go to career fairs, do your own independent research, talk to people that aren't paid to recruit you. You know, like people that just work there, and you kind of, you know, will give you kind of the good, bad, and the ugly. I think that's really helpful. And just kind of figure out, you know, how people that have been successful there, how their brains work, and does it kind of align with yours? I mean, one thing that really stuck out to me as I was going through the recruiting process, as someone who recruited me to Miller Cooper, you know, they had just mentioned that like they got interested in accounting because they like puzzles, you know, and they like figuring things out. And I'm like, I like figuring things out. I like puzzles. And it was very much, you know, I didn't know it at the time necessarily, but that really led into do you get the satisfaction in the mission complete or getting through a project? Because you're going to have to kind of do that for yourself. You got to be intrinsically motivated enough to want to do these things, to put up with the hours, the late night, the random phone call, all that other stuff. And it was just, you know, I wouldn't have had that if I just wasn't talking to a bunch of people and kind of comparing and contrasting that conversation and that insight about that person and their personality with other people I had met with throughout kind of the recruiting and the job fair process.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are already doing it, just being here today. Again, all the mentoring, everything we've said earlier. Another thing also that I always enjoyed was, you know, getting accounting and business periodicals. Those are always very helpful. You know, Journal of Accountancy, things of that nature. And then when you start work, you'll see there's all kinds of that type of material that you can gain access to. And it's just self-learning, right? Because that's an important piece of the future too. Once you walk out of here with your diploma, you're not done, you're never done. And so using those periodicals, throughout your career is also going to keep you connected.
Yeah, taking advantage of your school resources, learn how to interview, learn how to network, finding that mentor. I was fortunate enough to have participate in the mentorship program, and we met periodically, and there's a group of students, and we just had an opportunity to just to talk, outside of the business and outside of what life is like. It's just you get to kind of know somebody that, hey, maybe I can be that person. Maybe I can do that. How's his or her stress level? Is it manageable? Can I do that? But again, learning how to interview, it can be daunting many times to dress up and get in front of somebody in person or Zoom nowadays. But it's a process. But once you can communicate, you learn how to communicate, and you are confident, it gets easier. Promise you.
Yeah, definitely work on your resume, right? So your sophomores now, I guess you're finishing your second year associate degree or your second year, and then moving on into accounting. Start building your resume, right? So when we look at your resume, it's not just about your grade, right? I mean, now you go into a profession, and a lot of times there's a minimum grade that you look at, but that's just kind of the basics, right? And then what's in that resume that would stand out, that would make you interesting, that you can talk about, right? And so what do you do now to get ready for that in a couple of years when you're going to graduate, right? It means you are participating in various events or communities or Beta Alpha Psi or, accounting societies, or those are just references for NIU.
Yeah.
But there are stuff like that out there, right? That those are the things that, I think help build your leadership skills as well. And not just being a member, maybe that's a start, but if you have a chance to be a leader in those types of communities, then raise your hand. And you'd be surprised how little time it actually takes to be a part of those, but it's so impactful to your growth and to your resume, and to be able to talk about it. Think about it, right? You go to an interview, what do you talk about? You're not going to talk about the fact that you have a 3.5 in, right? It's like, you don't even talk about, that's kind of a given that you'll have a good grade to be able to get to that interview. Then arm yourself with all these great things and the stories. And, I think that's what makes for a great conversation too, because if you have not a lot to talk about, it's hard, right? You can only do so much as the interviewers to ask you questions, but you got to come prepared with your stories and your experiences and those types of things. So start building it. And I think you'll be, like I said, you'll be surprised that, and those organizations, by the way, you meet a lot more people. And then folks like us come to those organizations too, to actually talk more to you guys. So it will keep going. So just keep, keep it up with, just participating and being leaders.
So not to turn this into a commercial for career services, but this idea of being prepared for interviews, developing these stories, how can you present it? That's what we're here for. You can do mock interviews with us. We can help you structure that information, and how can you communicate this professionally? We can talk about LinkedIn so you can build that network. So make sure you're utilizing your resources here on campus, career services being one office where we want you to take what you're learning today and apply this to your future. So with that said, we do want to hear from you guys as you're here. So is there anyone that has a question for our panel? Yes, in the back.
Hi, should I stand or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So you all stressed the importance of knowing Excel. What do you all think as far as QuickBooks?
Absolutely.
Like, how
Yes.
crucial?
And for what I do, I'm touching QuickBooks almost every day. And there's different versions of QuickBooks. There's different aspects of that. Whether you know QuickBooks or not, it's a very, it's a software that's out there for everybody. But so if you learn that, chances are you'll learn other softwares that information does translate, such as you get into a private, right? They have their own version of their own QuickBooks, or other big organizations, they have their own version of their own sets of way of keeping track of their books. But having that base knowledge is invaluable.
Yeah, something we talk about as an office is being technology agile. So if it's using Excel, if it's using QuickBooks, using whatever it is, you learn one platform and then you adjust with that platform as you go into whatever they're using.
Yeah.
I believe we have a virtual question.
Yep, we do. So the virtual question is, how important is having a CPA today? Is it essential to achieve the positions you all have on the panel?
Yes. I think having a CPA is critical today. You know, maybe not so much, you know, when I started out, you know, I don't remember ever looking at jobs and them saying CPA required, CPA required. I think today, whether, you know, do you need a CPA to perform these functions in a job? No, the knowledge is still there, but from a company's perspective, it's about risk, right? And so from a company's perspective, they want that insurance policy, which is my financial leadership are CPAs, right? It's that extra, hey, they're more well-rounded, if you will, right? We all know what's entitled with the CPA exam, so it's not just accounting. They've taken that ethical oath, et cetera. So I can tell you with certainty, if there's two candidates and the only difference between them is a CPA, the CPA will get that job every time.
Yeah, so I'm gonna chime in this because I tried to study for the CPA exam. I could not pass for the life of me, right? I didn't know the best way to study for this exam. And it took me a while, more than I'm going to tell you guys. So then I went to do the EA exam, because the enroll agent exam, because that applied to more of what I'm doing. And so I had no problem with that one, but having that CPA, it's a hazing process. Well, if you've got those initials next to your name, it's like, okay, you've conquered that hurdle. You have a certain level of knowledge and ways of learning. You've demonstrated that you can do this. You've had that challenge, you've overcome it. So while it's not necessarily mandatory, and depending on what organization you choose to go to, it certainly helps. Certainly helps.
So at our firm, you can't, so there's a hierarchy in most public accounting firms, you know, kind of the different levels of responsibilities and roles you have on a job. At our firm, you can't get promoted to the manager level, which is generally a 5 to 7 year title. You can't get promoted to that without a CPA, unless you're on the tax side. You can usually do an EA or a JD.
Yep.
Go to law school for tax law. So it's essential in what I do.
Mhm.
And that's just in my firm. And then professionally, you're not allowed to sign audit reports unless you're a CPA.
Yep.
So unequivocally, I could not do my job without having gotten the CPA exam. But to Joe's point, I'm glad I did it immediately out of school.
Yes.
And this is other good advice, you know, whether you're gonna sit for the CPA exam or other sort of large professional exam. I don't care how bad of a student you think you are now, you will never be a better student than you are right now, right? And then life will start happening and you'll
Yes.
get more busy and worse at studying. So anytime you have something, a big kind of professional goal that you need to gear up for and carve time out of your schedule to study and pass, do it as soon as possible. That's the best advice you can walk away from today with, is because it will only get harder. And if you set that goal for yourself, you know, you don't want to make it any harder than it's got to be.
Yeah, I knew I had to. I'm like, I'm gonna start having kids. I gotta get this done now because I won't have any time. So
Yeah, and I think, you know, the profession's doing some better things in terms of the format of the exams. You can do it with some flexibility. Back in my day, you did it 2 days. 8 hours first day, 8 hours the second day. It's grueling. And so, I mean, the passing rate back then was just very bad. It was very, very bad. So when I didn't pass audit my first time, I'm like, oh, how can I be an auditor if I didn't even pass audit? But then you go into public accounting, you go through one busy season and you knock it out of the park because you learn so much your first year. But But hopefully the profession's doing something about really the pass rate on the CPA so that it's, not as, I don't know, I mean, I haven't.
It doesn't need to be the hurdle that it is.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
It's usually like, they, I don't know, I mean, I have a theory. I don't want to get too
Yeah.
theoretical here, but it's to weed out the bad people, right? So.
You guys can do it. You guys
Yeah.
can do it. You got this.
Mhm.
You got this.
Any other questions?
A lot of jobs nowadays require experience. What would you recommend would be good experience opportunities for a career in accounting?
So it depends. So if you're graduating with a degree, hopefully like through the degree program, you'll have exposure to getting internships. Again, that's where talking to career services, whether it's here, if you move on to a four-year school, there's a lot of resources at your fingertips. So I would say first and foremost, to the extent that you can leverage those and get internship opportunities, I mean, all employers are looking for qualified candidates. We're all looking for, the next us, not to brag, but the reality is, the first place we're going to look is at the schools. Very rarely is our first stop LinkedIn or a job posting or anything of that sort. So I would say that's the first place you go. And then beyond that, I mean, you can look at, before you have your degree, look for opportunities if someone's needing help with accounts receivable or accounts payable, if there's things for general bookkeeping. If you do have some QuickBooks experience, there's tons of small businesses that the entrepreneur wants to work on their business. They don't want to deal with the books.
Yeah.
So if you have some, basic kind of core competencies in that software, that plus a little bit of accounting background, that'll give you more than enough to help a small business owner run their company. And that's great experience. I mean, you'll actually, kind of living in the trenches and doing that for a business could be better than having, a small internship at a public accounting firm, because you'll really get to know kind of the guts of how the business operates, how that interacts with the financial statements and the accounting software. So, I mean, that's where I would start, like looking for kind of some of those buzzwords and postings. And I will say, it is daunting when they want certain types of experience, and sometimes it's, experience needed, but it's an entry-level job. You hear about that kind of in the employment market at large. I think we're less about it in accounting. I think especially us, we're trying to bet more on the people and again, not to undervalue kind of higher education, but if you have the basics coming into our firm, we'll take it from there. There's so much on the job training that goes on within organizations. So, I think we've learned, it doesn't matter how prestigious of a school you went to. It doesn't matter, yes, the GPA needs to be at a certain level to get in the door. But after that, we're investing in the person. And, we've hired people with completely irrelevant experience because they're the right person. And we've had people that, maybe their grades weren't great, but they've done kind of beyond the job. They helped do the books for their family's company, or, they worked for a friend, and that translated really well to kind of sustained success at the firm.
Yeah, you can translate experience that you currently have, may not necessarily be for accounting, but to Dave's point, if you're working in a family's company or a friend, or you work at a fast food restaurant, there's all kinds of skills in that job that you can transfer over even to an entry level. And so focus on what your strengths are, right? That's how you build strength. Focus on what you have, and then you just kind of add to your skill set toolbox as you go along. Another option would be also, maybe look into consulting, temporary companies like a Robert Half or something like that. What's great about that, if you do that for a year or so, I mean, you could work at 10, 15, 20 different companies, right? And gain all kinds of experience. And having that broader perspective will actually be a leg up a year from now, right? As opposed to saying, well, I've only worked in one place in one job for a year. The person who's worked in 10 or 15 different places and has 3 or 4 different computer systems, et cetera, that's more attractive to a prospective employer.
So getting involved, very important, back to Christina's point here, as far as transferable skills, right? Thinking of what you're doing right now, being aware of what your goals are and how has your current experience prepared you for that. If it is in retail, fast food, whatever it is, trying to identify what skill sets you're going to need for the future and being set to tell those stories. and how you can translate that moving forward. So I believe we have another virtual question.
We do, yes. So the next virtual question is, were any of the panelists non-traditional students? And one of the participants said, I had a previous career, for example, and then became a CPA.
Not me, but that's who we hire. That's who I like. You know, my firm is not doing the job fairs at NIU. We're just not. I like those people that have those real life experience in many different facets. So I'm one of 4 partners. I'm the only one with an accounting degree. 2 are history, and what's the other one? English.
Oh, interesting. Great.
It's just, you know, they all had different paths to become where they're at. So it's just, yes, bottom line, yes, I strongly encourage the accounting degree because it's a good foundation for anything that you're gonna do. But yeah.
I'm as traditional as they come, so I'll sit this one out.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying, I was born wanting to be a CPA, so I don't know. There's nothing else I've ever
I
done
had a
besides that.
sophomore high school career speech on accounting, and after that, it was like, yeah. But I felt very fortunate that every step of the way was like, I really do want to do this. Oh, I really do want to work here. So, and that's not traditional. I understand that.
Yeah, no, same here, but you know what? Pivoting to accounting, there's just a lot of opportunities, right? It's just a lot. So if you want to do it, it's a profession to do the 360 and, you know, you can go into consulting, advisory, right? I mean, this may not have to be that very technical stuff like auditing or tax, but in consulting, I mean, we have a lot of non-CPAs in consulting. We have a partner who you don't have to be a CPA, but he's a principal because he's an advisory. His background is engineering. And he's a principal today. And so, so yeah, I mean, you can definitely go into this profession with a different background and do well.
And the industry as a whole is going that way too. I know I've been sitting in, you know, reading professional publications, you know, sitting in some professional conferences. And yeah, there's going to be a lot more of that, because if you think about how nuanced and specific, you know, the world is becoming, you know, sure, the CPA is going to help, you know, translate, you know, what some technology, how that needs to be reported, and what the accounting rules are related to that. But someone's got to understand the technology, or someone's got to understand. So I know even in our practice, being middle market, I mean, we have like a large group of folks that it's outsourced human resources. You know, COVID taught a lot of our clients that they don't have the resources in-house that they need to fully support, you know, legal human resource practices, and they don't have the funds to hire someone full-time. So they hire kind of a recurring consultant or an outsourced consultant. So we've kind of added that to our practice, and we've started to do that in a bunch of different practice areas that, again, 5-10 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought of. So these are accounting firm employees, but they're providing way different services than traditional accounting, you know, audit, tax, things of that nature.
Any other questions? Got one in the back.
So as you develop as an accountant, eventually you have to specialize and develop your niche. My question with that is, as you go on and pick that, there could be potential travel opportunities. I was wondering if you guys have any experience with traveling and picking like certain niches and what your experience was.
A lot of travel opportunities, probably less now, because I think people are a little bit, I mean, I think we'll get back into it. It probably won't be at the same level. But I think, you know, too much travel can get really old too. So, and that's one, I think some of the drawback in public accounting is when you're traveling way too much, right? It might seem nice the first year, first couple of years, and you just get really burnt out. But there's tons and tons of travel opportunities. And in, you know, I'm sure much like a big, you know, firm and practice, there's different areas, right? Are you in not-for-profit? You probably tend to travel less because a lot of your clients will be like in the city, if that's where the not-for-profit clients are. But, you know, banking, financial services, manufacturing. And if you have a client that is, have international locations, lots of travel. So for sure, lots of opportunities. Yeah.
Yeah, from the private side, if travel is a goal of yours, then yeah, seek out multi-site, whether it be, just in the US or internationally. Look for companies that have multiple locations. Because that's where you're going to be going, right?
Yeah.
And it would be part of your job to understand each location is unique. You're part of the same company, but each one has its own unique challenges. So being on site is critical. And it's fun. I mean, not only, again, do you see different perspectives, but, traveling is fun, especially when you're younger, right? When you don't have those responsibilities. I mean, I think I lived out of a hotel for like 3 or 4 years, just constantly going, and I loved it. Now I don't want to leave the house, right? But you ebb and flow, right, in your career. So, yeah, multi-site is key if you're looking for travel opportunities.
Yeah, and really getting into internal audit too, right? So if public accounting is not your, I guess, goal, and you want to go into, industry, there is internal audit, right? You're doing it for that company. And those tend to be the larger, bigger companies with multiple locations, and that will provide for, opportunities to travel if that's what your goal is. Yeah.
I don't travel at all. I really haven't through my career. It was part of my decision-making process and selecting the firm I went to. Maybe once a year, and typically that's once every few years, even pre-COVID. As far as developing an industry niche, we're a little different in the sense that, we're a big enough firm to have bigger clients and kind of the technical issues that kind of keep you on your toes. But we're small enough where we almost have to be by design generalists, and we take a lot of pride in that. So again, big part of this vetting process, figuring out, what do different firms represent, what do they stand for, what kind of opportunities do they have. If you want to be, there's a guy in our office who knows everything about international tax. Like he could speak and tell you, what the specific tax laws, if you're this type of US corporation with this type of residency down in, this part of Mexico, it's very specific. I never wanted to be that person, but he did, and he wanted to be that guy, so I think it all depends on your goals too. And then again, I think that's part of the selection process, how specialized are the different industry groups within an organization, or do they want you to be, a Jack or Jane of all trades? Do they want you to wear a lot of hats? So I think that's a big reason why some people burn out of certain jobs, or they end up not really enjoying the path they're on, is because it was mismatched from the start. You wanted to be the expert in your field, and their expectations were they wanted you to be well-rounded and know a little bit about tax and a little bit about accounting, or a little bit about, systems implementation. That's where you've got to be your own advocate too and speak up. So while we say yes to these opportunities, well, again, if you know where you want to end up, don't say yes to opportunities that are going to take you down a fork in the road where you might not like where you end up a little further down.
All right, so we'll open up for one more audience question.
So, being a military vet, I always think about things like how does the industry welcome the vets, or how do they exclude the vets, things like that. And I'm just kind of wondering, like accounting in general, how do military veterans come into this field and feel after the first year usually?
Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
One of my partners, he was in the military. His kids, one of his is in the military, and then my other partner, 2 of his kids are in the military. So it's I think you'd be well surprised, not only how welcoming, but how accommodating, if necessary, the accounting industry is with that. I think you provide, right, the whole point of job experience. You have a different experience than most, right? And that's, again, invaluable. And you may not be able to think in this way, but you will think this way. And it's huge.
Yeah, no, I quickly mentioned about our business resource groups, or BRGs, and we have quite a few catering to the different communities within our firm. So I belong to the Pan Asian Business Resource Group, and I'm one of the executive sponsors. So I work with a lot of our Pan Asian teammates, but we also have a Veterans Business Resource Group. And so that really takes our professionals out there that have this, veterans experience and get them together, right? Because there's a sense of belonging and there's a sense of, hey, how can we help each other? But, oh yeah, I mean, it's, we certainly, and that's part of the, and I'm sure it's not just our firm, it's a lot of companies out there that really focus on, just inclusiveness, right? And just the diversity of thought, because, I think when we can have someone that has a different background, why not, right? I mean, that just goes for the diversity of thought and not getting to the same people all the time talking about the same thing, right? So,
Yeah, you don't need to be a fresh grad, 21, 22, to give it, to be a staff accountant, to be a staff auditor.
no,
No,
absolutely not,
not at all.
absolutely not.
Yeah, and I would say, I think Julie hit on a great point. The resources available at a particular organization are really going to dictate how much is already set up there, or what kind of established resource groups there are. So like at our firm, we have hired a lot of veterans, but we don't have, we're still too small where we have, a dedicated committee or a dedicated resource. What is cool is that a lot of people kind of form those communities on their own. It's just kind of like unofficial, or, it's basically firm encouraged, but we're still kind of evolving as our own firm to try to develop and kind of more institutionalize some of those things. What I will say though, the attributes that the military instills in you are the same things that make you very successful. I mean, we've been talking about it, the teamwork, the understanding the importance of accountability, the reliance on each other and all the other things, kind of critical thinking and problem solving. These are all skills that translate. So I will tell you, and you also know the value of hard work, right? You also know that this may suck right now, but I'll get through it and I'll be better for it. I mean, that's our careers in a nutshell, is that, you're going to have these painful moments, but you see the benefit longer term in stacking up those challenges and overcoming those challenges, over a period of time. So I'll just tell you from my own experience and my experience at the firm, some of the best success we've had with hires is, former military personnel and former athletes. Because again, a lot of those attributes line up because again, I don't want to sugarcoat for you. It's going to be hard at times. There will be times you want to quit, and those kind of subsets of people, that's what they do, right? They're used to kind of pushing themselves and being like, I don't want to do this right now. I don't want to wake up this early. I don't want to go on this run. I don't want to whatever, but they do it and they're glad they did it. I mean, the kind of longer term benefit, the longer term sight, not the instant gratification folks, those people really translate
Oh,
well.
those kids, I'm kidding. Resilience, right? Resilience.
Yes,
It's
yes,
very
yes.
resilient.
Great way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to our panel. Such great information that you've shared here. Thank you to our audience for being here, taking this in. But this is really just a start. We have some time saved here at the end to network. So if that's networking amongst yourself as audience, taking time to come up here and network with the panel, they have agreed to that. So please take advantage of this opportunity and make sure that you reach out to them and thank them personally because they shared such great information here. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
It's what he said, living out of a suitcase. I could not, I could barely sleep in
loved it.
hotels.
I loved it when
I
I first
hate it.
started out.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
I actually had a question.
Yeah.
Connection.
It's all good. I got parts.
So I actually.
You do?
You said it, like, sort of last, like, choosing.
Really? Who are you talking
So-
Yeah.